The end did not arrive with a final stand. It arrived with paperwork. Orders, countersignatures, delays. And in those delays, the German army quietly died. By March 1945, Patton's Third Army no longer fought battles in the traditional sense. It arrived, and resistance either formed instantly or dissolved before it could. The Germans had not lost their weapons, they had lost their sequence. The river that was supposed to hold the Rhine, for generations, German military doctrine treated it as destiny, a barrier, a pause, a place where wars slowed and negotiations began. Patton never believed in pauses. When intelligence suggested the Rhine crossings would be contested heavily, Patton did something unexpected. He accelerated. Bridges were seized, intact because German demolition teams were waiting for confirmation that never came. Units tasked with defense were awaiting orders to retreat or counterattack, orders that contradicted each other. Patton crossed not because the Rhine was weak, but because German command was silent. Hitler's final illusion. Hitler still believed in command. He believed orders created reality. He signed directives demanding impossible movements from exhausted units. He insisted on counteroffensives that required fuel Germany no longer possessed. He dismissed field reports as defeatism. But the men receiving those orders no longer argued. They simply stopped. The chain of command no longer broke. It evaporated. Patton's most dangerous decision after crossing the Rhine. Patton faced his greatest risk. His flanks were exposed. His supply lines stretched thin. His army had outrun doctrine itself. Every textbook warned against this. Patton ignored them. He understood something no manual could teach. Fear travels faster downhill than authority travels uphill. And German authority was collapsing. The German general who let go near Wurzburg, an entire German corps disengaged without a fight. The commanding general later explained his decision during captivity. I could not justify dying for a headquarters that no longer knew where I was. That single sentence summarized the collapse of German high command more than any battlefield map ever could. The silence in Berlin. Grossby, April. Hitler's headquarters had grown unnaturally quiet. Fewer officers attended briefings. Fewer maps were updated. Fewer questions were asked. No one wanted to be the last man to speak truth, because truth had become treason. And Patton's army kept moving. The Americans noticed the absence. American soldiers began remarking on something chilling. They no longer saw senior German officers among the prisoners. They had disappeared. Some had fled. Some had surrendered quietly. Some had simply abandoned command. The German army was still there, but its mind was gone. Patton's reflection. Patton stood watching his columns advance into central Germany. There was no cheering. No celebration. He said quietly to an aide, I always thought we'd have to kill this army. He paused. Turns out we just had to outrun its courage. Hitler's last assessment of Patton in one of his final conversations, before retreating fully into the bunker. Hitler mentioned Patton one last time. Not with rage. With bitterness. He fights like history does not exist, Hitler said. That was not an insult. It was an admission. Patton had ignored tradition, hierarchy, and precedent. And one. The war ends where control ends. When Germany finally collapsed, it was not because every unit was destroyed. It was because no one believed orders mattered anymore. Patton's humiliation of German high command was not public. It was internal. Invisible. And irreversible. The quiet after victory. Patton did not linger. He moved on. The war was over for him before the surrender documents were signed, because the real war, the one against certainty, had already been won. Final note: history often tells us wars are decided by firepower, numbers, or strategy. But this war turned on something smaller. Time. George S. Patton took time away from the German high command, and once they no longer controlled time, they no longer controlled anything. That is what Hitler finally understood, too late. The signal that shouldn't have existed at 0300 hours. An American signals unit intercepted a transmission that wasn't encrypted properly. It wasn't even disguised. It was a German corps headquarters asking Berlin a single question: do we hold or do we move? That question alone revealed everything. German doctrine did not allow uncertainty at that level. Corps commanders were supposed to know. Patton read the transcript and exhaled slowly. He didn't celebrate. He didn't joke. He said only this: they're asking permission to survive. And then he ordered the attack to begin before sunrise. A new kind of American advance. Patton changed nothing about his tactics, but everything about his timing. Instead of attacking at dawn, he attacked before dawn. Instead of massed thrusts, he sent overlapping spearheads that appeared uncoordinated until they weren't. German observers reported armor where none should be. Infantry appeared from directions marked impassable. Supply convoys rolled through towns still displaying German flags. The Germans began defending shadows. And Patton knew it. Inside Berlin, the fracture widens in Berlin. Maps were being replaced every 12 hours. Not updated. Replaced. Because the old ones no longer made sense. Hitler demanded explanations. He demanded names. He demanded punishments. The generals gave him excuses. Weather, fuel shortages, communication failures. Hitler slammed his fist into the table. Patton does not have more fuel than us. He does not have better weather than us. He has generals who act and officers who obey. That statement stunned the room, because it admitted something dangerous, that the enemy command structure was functioning better than Germany's. The American lieutenant who noticed first, it wasn't a general who spotted the next crack. It was a lieutenant, 24 years old, Iowa farm boy, no medals yet. His platoon captured a German supply depot intact. Inside were crates of ammunition, untouched, fuel drums, sealed, medical supplies stacked neatly. Nothing destroyed, nothing evacuated. The German officers had left. Without issuing orders. The lieutenant radioed it in. Patton personally requested the after-action report, and for the first time, he smiled. Patton's private admission that night. Patton wrote in his journal. He did not boast. He did not mention glory. He wrote, "The enemy is no longer fighting us. He is fighting himself." Then he closed the book and ordered the advance to continue. The German officer who refused to move near the Saar River, a German colonel, disobeyed orders. Not by retreating. By staying. He fortified his position, ignored withdrawal directives, and prepared to fight to the end. When American forces surrounded his command post, the colonel demanded to speak to Patton directly. Patton arrived in person. The colonel stood rigid, exhausted, eyes sunken. "You are destroying the army," he said. Patton replied calmly, "No, your command already destroyed it. I'm just walking through the wreckage." The colonel surrendered. Not in anger. In relief. Hitler's language begins to change. Word retreat vanished from Hitler's vocabulary. So did realignment. He replaced them with betrayal. He accused entire units of cowardice without evidence. He ordered counterattacks that existed only on paper. And for the first time, German generals stopped arguing back. They stopped responding at all. Silence crept upward. The day German orders contradicted themselves. A German panzer division received 2 orders within 6 hours. One commanded them to counterattack west. The other demanded they hold their current position at all costs. Both bore Hitler's authorization. Neither acknowledged the other. The division commander froze. He did nothing. By the time clarity arrived, Patton's armor had already cut the road behind him. The division ceased to exist without firing a major engagement. Patton accelerates again. Patton sensed the window narrowing. Psychological collapse didn't last forever. So he pushed harder. Columns advanced without waiting for flank security. Risk was accepted openly. Commanders were told to exploit confusion, not eliminate it. Speed replaced caution. The Third Army moved like something alive. Unpredictable. Relentless. The German general who finally spoke truth in a closed meeting, a senior German general, said what no one else dared. Patton is not superior in force. He is superior in decision. Hitler stared at him. And then whispered, "Then we are already lost." The illusion shattered. German troops began surrendering before contact. Entire companies waved white flags at the sound of approaching engines. Some units abandoned positions simply because they believed Patton was coming even when he wasn't. Patton's name became a weapon. An invisible one. The Americans feel it. American soldiers noticed something strange. The enemy wasn't fighting with desperation anymore. They were fighting with confusion. Some fought hard. Others collapsed instantly. Some surrendered in organized formations, as if grateful the waiting was over. The war had changed texture. And Patton knew the end game had begun. Hitler's quiet moment. Late one night, long after staff had left, Hitler remained alone in the map room. An aide later recalled him standing still, staring at the Western Front. He did not shout. He did not rage. He said softly, "He does not give us time to think." That was the most honest assessment Hitler ever made of the war. A new directive from Patton issued a message to his commanders. It was brief. "Do not pause to celebrate success. Momentum is life. Stop, and the enemy breathes." Every unit understood. The Third Army did not stop. Closing of Part 2. By February 1945, German High Command was no longer directing a war. It was reacting to one. And reaction is always slower than intention. Patton had taken something from them that could never be regained. The ability to set the pace. In Part 3, that loss will become irreversible. Because once the enemy stops believing tomorrow can be controlled, today becomes unbearable and the war races toward its final reckoning. The day the map lead December 1944. The German High Command stared at a map that no longer told the truth. Red and blue arrows had always obeyed rules. Arrows moved slowly. Arrows respected supply lines. Arrows waited for permission. But now, something was wrong. Entire German formations were disappearing between morning briefings and evening reports. Towns marked secure at dawn were under American control by nightfall. Prisoner counts didn't match intelligence estimates. They were too high, far too high, and every report carried the same signature. Third Army. George S. Patton Jr., Hitler, did not speak at first when the numbers were read aloud. He leaned forward, gripping the edge of the table, eyes fixed not on the officers but on the map itself. Because maps weren't supposed to do this. Patton's war was already moving while Berlin debated symbols and slogans. Patton had abandoned ceremony entirely. He slept in short bursts. He ate standing up. He read reports while engines warmed and issued orders while vehicles were still rolling. His headquarters moved so often that German reconnaissance couldn't fix it in place. Patton understood something most generals didn't. Speed wasn't. Movement. Speed was confusion inflicted faster than it could be corrected. And confusion was lethal. A captured diary no one expected story truly began not with Patton, but with a German major, whose name history forgot, captured near Nancy. The officer carried a leather-bound diary wrapped carefully in oilcloth. It wasn't code. It wasn't propaganda. It was a personal record of daily command frustrations. An American intelligence officer read it late at night by flashlight. The entries grew shorter as Patton advanced. Orders contradicted each other. Units were reassigned twice in the same day. Commanders were promoted and relieved within hours. One line, written in shaky pencil, stood out. We no longer know where the Americans are, only where they were. That diary reached Patton the next morning. He didn't smile. He nodded and ordered his armor forward again. The day 50,000 men disappeared. No American general ever set out to capture 50,000 enemy soldiers in a single day. But Patton didn't set out to capture them. He set out to outpace their ability to retreat. German units pulled back according to doctrine step by step, fallback point to fallback point. But Patton didn't attack fallback points. He attacked the time between them. Columns advanced, day and night. Tank crews rotated while engines ran. Infantry rode on armor, boots dangling inches above frozen roads. Bridges were seized before charges could be detonated. Communications hubs were taken intact because no one believed Americans would arrive that fast. By nightfall, German divisions found themselves surrounded without ever hearing a major engagement. And when they surrendered, stunned and furious, they asked the same question. How did you get here already? Hitler finally spoke. The report was read twice in the Führer's headquarters. 50,000 prisoners. Minimal American losses. German command cohesion collapsed. Hitler stood. His chair fell backward. He didn't rage at Patton. He raged at his own generals. He accused them of cowardice, sabotage, incompetence. He claimed the numbers were fabricated, then claimed they were treason. He demanded explanations that no one could give, because Patton hadn't broken German strength. He had broken their assumptions. A phone call that changed everything in a quiet office miles from the front. An American signal officer patched through. A call Patton wasn't supposed to receive. Berlin. Intercepted. A senior German officer, voice strained, said something extraordinary. Patton is not fighting the war we planned for. That sentence reached Allied intelligence within hours. It was circulated quietly. No headlines, no announcements. Just understanding. Patton's private fear. That night, Patton sat alone in his command vehicle, helmet resting on his knee, for the first time in days. He wasn't issuing orders. He was listening. To the sound of distant artillery. To the engines idling. To the weight of knowing momentum cuts both ways. Because speed doesn't forgive mistakes, and Patton knew if he slowed even once, the spell would break. The German high command breaks within weeks. German officers began acting independently, not from initiative, but from panic. They redeployed without authorization. They abandoned strong points early. They hoarded fuel that never arrived. Orders from Berlin were obeyed on paper and ignored in reality. Patton's name became shorthand. He's pulling a Patton meant everything has changed again. And Hitler noticed something worse than defeat. He noticed obedience failing. What Hitler said at last words were not recorded officially. They were recalled later by an aide who survived the war. Hitler said, This American general does not fight our army, he fights our thinking, and he is winning. It was not admiration. It was fear. The final push be the time Allied forces crossed into Germany proper. Resistance felt hollow, not weak. Hollow. Like a structure whose beams had already snapped inside. Patton didn't celebrate. He pressed harder, because he understood something no one in Berlin did. Wars don't end when armies collapse. They end when belief collapses. Final not long after the guns fell silent. Historians would argue over numbers, over credit, over personality. But the truth is simpler. George S. Patton didn't humiliate the German high command by defeating them. He humiliated them by proving their certainty was fragile. And once certainty, even the most powerful command structure becomes nothing more than noise.